conversations beyond the ordinary.
Welcome to Transpersonal Arts, passionate explorations beyond the ordinary. I am Dr. Lila Moore, one of the co-founders of this podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Inna Dulerain and MaryRita McGuire. Our podcast is devoted to insightful conversations that explore the vast landscape of transpersonal arts, where creativity intersects with personal and collective transformation. Join us as we delve into the symbolic, archetypal, mystical, occult, magical, visionary, and expressive dimensions of the arts, offering perspectives that go beyond the everyday. Whether you are an artist, seeker, healer, visionary pioneer, technologist, alchemist, or simply curious about the transformative power of transpersonal approaches, we invite you to subscribe and discover thought-provoking content that nurtures the spirit and ignites profound exploration. This podcast grew out of a transpersonal arts exhibition and a panel discussion held during the Eurotas and Aleph Trust Creative Bridges Conference at Oxford University in September 2024. Those initial conversations inspired us to create a dedicated space and time for sharing stories, insights, and ideas, a conversation we believe is missing in contemporary culture. Authentic exploration starts with oneself. Today, 3 of us have come together to share our thoughts as we embark on this journey into the transpersonal unknown. We are guided by a calling, a call to undertake a journey that is both inner and outer. Each of us brings a unique story and a distinct reason for answering this call. Through this podcast, we hope to uncover the callings of fellow travelers, psychonauts, and those who have chosen to take the road less traveled, deeply exploring the landscapes of the psyche and body through ancient wisdom, philosophy, psychology, history, and modern technologies. We embrace the mystery of life and the depth it brings, knowing we don't have all the answers. We are learners and seekers, and this podcast reflects our openness to the unknown. Join us, and the many voices will feature along the way. We hope that each conversation offers you something meaningful and inspiring, wherever you are on your journey. So, let's start. MaryRita, please tell us about your calling.
Okay, thank you so much, Lila. And lovely to be here with both of you today. And I was walking on the beach this morning and, reflecting on this call. When did this call actually come into my life? How far back does this calling take me? And I could pinpoint like a moment when I was about 6 years old of just being in quite a turbulent childhood. So my childhood was incredibly turbulent. It was very unpredictable. And I've got 2 older brothers, and they had a room together, and I slept on my own in another room. And when these kind of unpredictable things would happen within the family, I would go to my room, but I would never feel alone. I would never feel like I'm just sat there as a child. There was always a presence. There was always this feeling of the other, of something outside myself, something that was part of me that I didn't fully understand because I'm 6 years old. So it was just something like this whisper, if you like, of that there's more to us than just our physical being. There's more to us than just how we operate in the material world. And the next kind of moment that happened to me, which is definitely what you were talking about, Lila, this road less traveled, is when I was 12 years old. And when I was 12 years old, I left school and I embarked on quite a journey. But one of the key moments of me making that decision was, again, this presence, this voice, this otherness that just spoke to me and said, you need to leave. You need to leave school. And I listened to this deeply intuitive space, and it served me so well. I'm not recommending that everybody just leave school if they hear a voice, but it served, in terms of my personal journey and my professional journey, it served me so well that opening up this corridor, this doorway to what I now understand as the transpersonal, was this intuitive knowing, this otherness, this presence, this collective energy that was guiding me. And it guided me through not just an intuitive inner knowing, but also the people that came across my path, the mentors. And this makes me, think about the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, of the sense that we meet people when we listen to the call. We then meet people, teachers and mentors that come into our lives and support us and guide us in making kind of decisions that don't feel like they're rational decisions. They feel like they're beyond the rational intelligence. They're a spiritual intelligence. They're a multiple intelligence. And for me, it was these mentors that guided me into performing arts. They were unconventional. They were rebels. They were people who were like, no, you don't have to have an education in a school. No, you don't have to do your GCSEs now. So for some reason, the universe, the transpersonal being, brought rebels to my life. And it felt like there was this unconventional path that opened up for me. And from that moment on, it was about performing arts for me, storytelling and drama, and finding my voice through that vehicle, through the vehicle of performing arts, and in particular drama. And the moment I heard transpersonal for the first time was so many years later. I was living a transpersonal worldview without knowing it. But then when I did my undergraduate, I did it in creative expressive therapies, and I chose the drama pathway. And I came across some incredible dramatic processes, the work of Artaud, the theatre of the absurd, the Augusto Boal, coming into like social theatre from Brazil, dramatic body work, playback theatre. And it was almost like this other world of performing arts opened up for me. And I chose to do my dissertation on the presence of absence. So exploring the presence of something that is absent through mask work. So how a mask can kind of connect us to our outer world, but also into this inner world. And that's when I discovered transpersonal psychology. I was looking for the right word to express what I was trying to convey to my readers. This idea that a mask can be a tool or a vehicle that takes us deeper into ourselves, that activates archetypes, that activates collective energy, that takes us out of rational intelligence into spiritual intelligence and multiple intelligence. And I discovered transpersonal psychology in that time. And that's what I did my dissertation on, masks being a transpersonal tool. And I realized that's how I'd always seen drama, as something that allows me to connect to something deeper within myself through archetypal work, through working with the psyche, with this idea of a psychoid as well, that kind of moves us through and is our guide into the imaginal realm, into liminal spaces. And the liminal space just came alive for me. It was this moment of, I love being on stage. It's a liminal space. It's a space where characters and energies move through you. And especially if it's a work that is, you know, connected to flow and knowing and spontaneity or improvisation, like playback theatre, where you hear a story as an actor and then you convey that story in a symbolic way. So it was all that sense of being connected to the transpersonal. And then it was several years later, after being a drama teacher for several years, that I started to have this really incredible synchronicity of hummingbirds. So the hummingbird, the sunbird, just kept following me around. I was seeing it everywhere, absolutely everywhere. And I was like, what does it want? What is it asking of me? And again, because this intuitive knowing, this presence was connected from such an early age, you know, I'd say 12 was probably the shift of awareness. 6 was the little tap. But I was aware that when things talk to you in this way, you listen to them because they're coming to you from a knowingness that is outside rational intelligence again. And these hummingbirds were just everywhere. And I felt this calling to the transpersonal. I felt this huge draw to transpersonal psychology. And I started to research master's programs and courses. And I found the Aleph Trust, where I did my master's in consciousness, spirituality, and transpersonal psychology. And there was a hummingbird on the front page. And it was just one of these moments of, oh, I found this, what the hummingbird wants from me. And it was really interesting because 3 years later, the day I submitted my dissertation, the day I submitted, a hummingbird landed on my balcony and tapped on the window. And I was like, yes, you're right. We're finished. We're complete. We've done this journey. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And I guess that's what I'm going to kind of wrap up on this, is this idea that when we have a transpersonal worldview, when we experience the world from a deeper knowing, from a deeper intuitive space, from this sense of the collective energy, we operate from a completely different level. I feel like the level I'm able to serve is much more connected than if I had gone through a mainstream education and I would have just been learning from my head. But for some reason, I found this little path that took me somewhere else. And that's kind of been my journey, which continues to unfold. But it's that relationship with the inner world that has truly lit up my life. That's how I would say. So.
Thank you, MaryRita. That was so interesting and so deep and rich. And I feel that we can and we will continue this conversation that you started, because there is a lot to unpack in what you've just told us. And, each of us, it can take something else from this conversation. For me, for example, what I felt very strongly about is the fact that you were aware of something else as a child, that your experiences started as a child. And I truly believe that, a bit like James Hillman, in his book, The Soul's Code, he talks about children that are aware and basically know what they are here to do in their lifetime. And they know it from a very young age. And the problem is sometimes the family or the grown-ups or the schools. It depends on their destiny, according to him. But I truly believe that children should receive enough space, enough inner space and time to discover, to play, And play is so important when you are a child, and even playing alone, like you probably did, because I felt from your story a sense of loneliness or a sense of being there alone, which is very interesting. I felt the same, I had people around me, but I still felt alone and lonely in a childlike way, of course. But it's a very unique experience. And I think in these days, with all these technologies and disruptions, and, forcing children to learn, science and technology and other things so quickly, it feels that they are missing the opportunity to evolve, to develop naturally, and to discover through play and through just very simple way of being present in life and in nature. And I think you bring your story to is very evocative of these feelings and ideas.
Oh, thank you, Lila. And one of the things that really drew me was working with young people. I felt like a lot of my work over the last 15 years was working with teenagers, and especially that sense of this threshold of adulthood, and this idea that, I'm a child and then I'm an adult, but that there's no real process for young people, for teenagers, for children to kind of navigate this difficult terrain. And what happens often is the child part gets cut off. It just gets severed rather than it comes with the journey, rather than that part of you is still with you in your 30s, your 40s, or your 50s. It's that sense that this part of us is cut off, it's severed, or it's pushed down. And for me, working with young people felt like a way to say that, that part of you is so rich and important and crucial as you move forward. And yes, the teenage world and childhood is different now. It's not the same as it was for me growing up in the 80s. There is technology, there is, this always being on in some ways. And I was listening to the psychologist Esther Perel, who was saying that, children are losing their negotiation skills because they're not in the playground. They're not meeting in these places where their stories are shared and where they come into connection with each other. It's this screen world. And I think that the screen world is part of our evolution. We have to accept and understand that it has both a dark and a light aspect to it. And I love that you mentioned James Hillman, because I love his concept of the aeon, this idea that children know whatever that you're doing as a child is a key sign of what you want to be when you're older, because children follow their souls. They do it so naturally. They follow their intuition. So, yeah, it's a beautiful journey for children if we allow it to be.
I just want to say something else, because I just have to now, because I'm going to lose it afterwards. I remember your dissertation and, your MSc dissertation, and that how important it was for you to emphasize the idea not only of the heroine's journey, but a rite of passage, going from being a young person to adults. And you were saying that in our culture, we don't have those rites of passage, those rituals that enable us to transition from one stage in life to the other. We are just being thrown to work or to school or to university or to whatever. And that could be so shattering and basically soul destroying, because you're not prepared to deal with these new realities. And if we only had those rites of passage and guidance, And this is, MaryRita, what you in a way proposed in your dissertation is a rite of passage, and you did it with with a small group of young women who were graduating, and it was also during the coronavirus, which was also very important, because we can talk about the corona another time, but that was also, especially in our Aleph Trust community, we talked about it as a rite of passage as well. It was almost something that the humanity experienced together. And so this is another thing, another story and another topic. But I think the point is that the ability to listen to this voice within, and to these synchronicities that guide us through life. And also the importance of rituals and rites of passage, which we will be discussing a lot in this podcast. Inna,
absolutely.
would you like to add to this conversation?
Yes, I actually excited to join this conversation, and I really excited to be part of this project and feel like we are opening the door for the journey. And telling about myself, my name is Inna Dulerain, and I'm a writer and theater director and filmmaker. But first of all, I'm a storyteller. And I have been a storyteller all my life, because first, as I started to remember myself as a child, I was telling stories because I was in love with magical stories, with fairy tales, and I was very good in telling them, everyone. And because it was actually very boring time, I grew up in Soviet Union, and we have just 2 TV channels. And films were only in the evening, and people were deprived of entertainment. So storytellers, I was so lucky to live in this time because I had audience, grateful audience. I always was asked, please tell us a story. And I could tell stories for hours, because for me, it was like making them alive, like living through them. Because when I was telling them those characters, they had new features, and I even made up some new events every time I was telling the story. So it was adventure for me. So, and then when I was about 11, I saw a dream, how I can make a performance from one of my stories. And just next day, I came to school and asked people, do you want to make a performance? Let's do it. And we started to stay after the classes and rehearse. And in 2 months, we made a show, and all school community joined us, because actually parents of children were excited to make some costumes, because we did not have theater clubs. It was just a new kind of community activity. So, and we, in 4 years after that, we made about 5 big shows for all school watching. And what was the main thing? I always let people improvise. We made routes for people. We discussed characters, and then people were allowed to be funny, to make their own lines, to kind of create new kind of gestures, movements. And it was all good fun, because when you are inside the story on the stage, reality changes around you, and you are already kind of being here and now, creating something unknown. And this meeting with unknown was maybe my first initiation, because I just learned first how to be in this kind of mysterious, unknown place and being happy and excited and kind of like absolutely out of ordinary state. And I saw how my friends loved it. And for me, it was a sign, wow, that is what makes people happy. And to be honest, that was my kind of like calling through my life. Although it's also become a shadow, I was looking the ways to make people happy. And sometimes we become so obsessed with it that we need to let people go their own ways and suffer because it's part of the journey. It's part of our game. And then after I finished school, I was on my quest to make people happy. I wanted to be a psychologist because I believe that psychologists are kind of like by profession, people who are supposed to make people happy. I found myself on cybernetics department of Moscow State University doing research on artificial intelligence in psychodiagnostics. So it was a kind of like this kind of strange way to psychology. But at the same time, universe directed me to very strange theater group and to very strange theater project, which called Attraction Mysteria. And it was a special, we had kind of genius director who was making up with us together. We were making a myth about eternal garden and garden creatures who are playing games of reality. And this eternal garden also playing the game, how it is being destroyed and regenerating. And on the first premiere, actually, it was 2 days happening on some Moscow suburbs. It calls dacha. It was just a house in this countryside. We invited audience, and 2 days we were making scenes and going through some kind of like crazy happening. And at some point, I just felt like my reality shifted. And I felt like everything was going on around me. It's magic. And we are not in this world anymore. It was a shock for me because I grew up in Soviet Union. I was an atheistic child. I never had this consciousness about kind of like some spiritual stuff. I didn't think about it. And at this moment, my kind of world was shaken. I realized that, wow, it's real. Magic is real. And it changed my life because after that, I was looking for that everywhere. I started reading all spiritual philosophy and all mystics. And so we all have been, all our community were crazy about making spiritual research. We were sharing, we were making new performances about this kind of, it was 10 years of my life. It was quite a big journey. And when it was over, I found myself looking at my life and thinking, okay, what I'm going to do? At this moment, I was working on TV and I was TV producer and making TV kind of like scripts and making TV kind of like some shows about art and even trying some pilots for TV series. So I tried myself in different genres on TV. But it was all very good, but not satisfying for me as a spirit. I was feeling like I'm being lost there. And at some point, I just looked at my life and decided, no, I need to go back to theater because there is no way for me what I want. I will not find here on TV. And I started to make my own projects, trying to build this spiritual community, trying to use theater as a vehicle to liminal space. And at the same time, I was kind of reading books on drama therapy, kind of reading about this liminal space and thinking, oh, those people, they found it too, this kind of like out of worldly magical space. They call it liminal space. So I was kind of like obtaining my new vocabulary, kind of on the edge between science and spiritual philosophy and arts. And if in my childhood I was very sociable, I was communicating with everyone, kind of like I was a leader, and but this was a period of research and loneliness for me, because I was feeling like a misfit. Because when you talk to people about this stuff, about spirituality in arts, they not always kind of understand you in the right way. They just think, oh, she's such a kind of like weird person in her own fantasies. It took me a while to find people who think like me, who tries to do something what I was trying and what I am still trying to do, and something is already on stage. Like my last show, Mythosphere, was running 3 weeks in London, and it was about magic. And it was actually very important event for me, because we started to do show about magic, but all kind of like symbols which came forward was about divine feminine, about goddess. And I realized that there is a connection between magic, spirituality, and divine mother. But it's another long conversation, which I hope to continue with you. So I'm happy that we are opening this door today. And I hope many people who went through this journey of looking like-minded people looking for their own tribe, who in a quest for mystery, for magic, for liminal in our life, because this is only way to be in touch with our true selves, because otherwise we are being lost in games of reality, playing social roles of different kinds. We are losing our source of that kind of like energy, which is everywhere, which unites all things, all human beings, all nature, and everything what it is. The source of this energy in this, our liminal self, our higher self, I can say, like, which is out of this world, which is in a shadow, in a darkness of mystery, like, and in a great mother's womb, waiting for being awakened, waiting for being invited for conversation. So I congratulate you that we are like midwives, like proper midwives, starting this kind of like awakening of mystery. And we will see lots of people on this way because we are not alone, definitely not alone. Yeah.
No, we are not alone.
So, yeah.
But we feel alone along the way, you know, in our journeys. on one hand, loneliness, I always feel that loneliness is very important because it's something that we need. And people, I just had a conversation with someone a few days ago, and she said to me that since she started to write poetry and publish her books, she suddenly feels lonely and she doesn't know why. And the thing is, because she's a very lively, energetic person, and not somebody who's going within and hiding in the room or introverted person. But suddenly the writing and the poetry probably opened a door for her to her own inner space, her own room, and she finds herself going within a lot, and it's very difficult for her to come out now. But she was asking me, why am I feeling so sad? And I said to her, I think that it's not sadness as if you're sad because something happens, or to grieve about something. It's a different type of sadness. It's a kind of a reflection. It's not lonely, but alone. It's feeling life more fully and being part of this existence, and this experience. It's very deep, and it's not just happy. There is this sadness. There is the life, has light and shadows in it, good things and bad things, basically. And there is pain in life. And the deeper we go, the more receptive we become. And I feel it makes us more compassionate. So, because in order to become compassionate, unless you're born compassionate, and I believe some people are compassionate from birth, it's like it's ingrained in them, but other people maybe need to slowly learn or open to compassion. It's not something that they are aware of initially. And it's something that they discover later in life, maybe, or after some experiences. You made me think about this, Inna, because you're that all you wanted to make people happy. I'm sure other people are feeling the same or have a similar experience. And I believe when I listen to you that maybe it's the part of you who is the healer, the person who comes here to heal. And maybe it's not psychology, maybe it's your art and theater, that you're using your talent to heal through the medium that you found. So I think we are also seeking our mediums. Because we're not everyone, knows exactly which medium they're going to use.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, for example, when I was writing play about magic, I started to join some workshops for intuitive reading, for healing, shamanic massage, kind of like I was trying different practices. And I learned that what is energy, and I actually found that I can operate with it, and I can do some healing for my relatives. But it was like opening this alternative universe, and I know so many brilliant people there doing so much, and I can learn from them. But at some point, I had this calling back to arts, to my storytelling, because as we just told today, our childhood giving us signs what we about to do here in this lifetime. And I am listening my little self and try to do my stories. And right now, talking about sadness, I'm thinking about our binary world we lived all the way through. Like being torn between good and evil, light and dark, and having those oppositions, and having strong opinion that dark is bad, light is good. But in nature, it's all not separated. And you need to go through the darkness, every plant growing in from the darkness of the soil. And it's a beautiful space of darkness where baby grows in mother's womb. And where lots of creative projects, actually, our intuition, everything being born in the darkness of a mystery. So, and we need to start trusting it and listen to it. So we need to shake our limitation of this binary world, like choosing before we understood. So my story is now kind of like keen to investigate this dark space of night, mother night, and telling about safe experiences there. Although I know that hero's journey going through the dark and unsafe places, and it's a part of the journey. Without this part, hero would not be hero, and he did not come to his destination.
Because the hero's journey, like you say, involves the dark, and the darkness is very much part of our journey. I hope that even this podcast will give people a certain safe place or safe space to feel safety in their journey, because it can be terrifying and it can be very, very difficult. I've been there, in my life, and there were moments where I really needed the type of help which I didn't get at that time, because I think that it just wasn't possible. It wasn't just because I didn't seek for it, it just wasn't available. And I think today, again, one of the good things with technology is that there is more access to others who are going through similar journeys or are talking about these types of experience, that we can find other people. And this is very, very important. It's also extremely important to women. Just a few weeks ago, I listened to a lecture by Dr. Christine Brooks, and one of the things that she said that was extremely important is say that women must or should have a support group somewhere, because it's so tough, what we need to deal with in the everyday and within society and culture, that we really need to have another framework of support that is not related necessarily specifically to the battles that we are fighting out there. I don't just mean that you need to find a psychologist or go to therapy. Obviously, this is not what we are doing here, but listening to the experience of other people and learning from it can give one hope and comfort and maybe something, they can take from it. So this is something that I hope we will be able to offer to those people who will find us. Maybe I should now talk a little bit about myself. So I'm going to start with synchronicities, because it's one of the great mysteries of the transpersonal, and I encountered it in my life a lot. And what makes synchronicity truly transpersonal is that it's an event where the inner world of the psyche suddenly manifests through a corresponding event in the external world. And in Jungian thought, synchronicity happens when there's a kind of alliance a harmonious correspondence between the desires of the psyche and the physical world. And this is what I noticed in my life, that whenever I was in conflict with the world or with whatever I wanted, things didn't happen. But when I stopped resisting to my innermost calling and I surrendered to what I truly want, then things started to happen, and something was able to manifest my inner purpose. And it happened more than once in my life. And I don't think I had one rite of passage. I had a number of rites of passage. And what I find really fascinating is how incredibly creative synchronicity can be. We can never predict the form it will take, whether it will come through a person, an object, an animal, an event, or even an unexpected message. But when we make ourselves available, when we are not distracted or mentally scattered, we can listen and recognize the signs and see the messages. And it just happened to me yesterday. So this is not about my childhood, it's something that just happened. And I thought it was amazing. A curator for an exhibition I'm participating in, it suggested listing this podcast on the exhibition flyer. Now, here's the thing. I had never mentioned this podcast to them, nor any podcast for that matter. And this is the first time we are actually broadcasting and doing it. Yet somehow this podcast became a reality even before we officially brought it into the world, even before we talked about it outside our small group. I took it as a clear sign, a synchronicity, that this podcast is meant to have a life of its own. It already exists somewhere in space-time, somewhere in the collective field of consciousness. And now here we are, giving it a voice, inviting it into reality. And other synchronicity happened connected to our recent history together, which is something that I want to talk about, because this is our introduction, really. When I was curating the exhibition for the Creative Bridges conference, I stumbled upon a fascinating dress. The design was striking, and I couldn't help but wonder about the creator. After some digging, I discovered that it was made by Alexandra Exter. At first, I thought she might be a contemporary designer, but it turns out that she was an avant-garde artist who lived in the early 20th century. Now, it may seem unrelated, but I find it very much in alliance with my calling in a way. And I sometimes feel sympathy with the stories of other women from history. And I don't look for them. They really appeared in my life. So this particular woman, Alexandra Exter, she was dubbed as the avant-garde Amazon. Now, I really like that, because in the past, I created an event and I gave a lecture with artworks, and it was dubbed Electric Amazons of the Avant-Garde. And it was about the women artists who created with electricity at the beginning of the century, because at the beginning of the century, electricity was a big thing. Like today, AI is a big thing, for example. So I thought that is interesting. And I thought that a story, there was something nomadic about her, because she was like a fixture in European artistic circles. during the early 20th century, traversing Kiev, Odessa, Paris, and Venice, and the UK. Her body of works spans various mediums, including painting, graphic arts, book design, fashion, theater, and cinema. So she progressed through those various artistic movements, from Cubism to Constructivism and Art Deco, and she was deeply interested in futuristic design. And this is what I found extremely interesting, because she designed costumes and settings for experimental theater productions, and especially costumes for dancers and characters in science fiction plays. Another point is that she worked alongside artists like Kazimir Malevich, who explored the future of humanity and the future of spirituality, and believed that art could be a substitute to religion. And I'm interested in exploring this relationship between the arts and spirituality, and sometimes it does interlaced with mystical traditions and various religions. So when I researched and discovered the work, I'd also discovered that during the Creative Bridges conference, there was an upcoming exhibition of her work at the Ukrainian Museum in New York. And it was the first major exhibition of her work in North America since her death in 1949, because she was basically forgotten. And this realization struck me deeply, how important it is to give voice to women artists, past and present, whose work often remained overlooked. And this theme of amplifying women's voices was a significant part of our panel discussion. And it's something that I want, and I'm sure we all want, to carry into this podcast. We aim to highlight women from all generations whose work delve into the human psyche, existence, the past, the present, and the future. And speaking of the future, it's something that I've always been drawn to. And as a child, I was still seeking my artistic mediums. I was fascinated by dance and by writing, and I was doing both. Started to write poetry, but I also wrote science fiction stories, and these stories I wrote as a child. And interestingly, I wrote as a boy or as a man, not as a girl. But this is not for this conversation today. There is a reason probably why I chose the voice of a boy or a man, to go to space or to visit the pyramids and meet all sorts of science fiction characters and technologies there. And I was doing it many years ago, and when I was a child. So these ideas gradually found their way back into my art and into my work when I found my medium. And I found my medium in the 80s when I started to explore multimedia performances using what was then very basic technology. But I was then very interested in hybridity and fusion of ideas, characters from the ancient past that kind of find themselves in futuristic environments, and sometimes very apocalyptic and strange, very strange. And I just have to say that it took me time to discover my quest for healing and my quest for wholeness. That came a bit later, more sort of in my kind of 30s. My PhD, which I completed in 2001 at Middlesex University, was in a way a rite of passage. I started at Central St. Martin's College of Art and Design, and then I had to transfer to Middlesex because at that time St. Martin's didn't give PhDs. Now they do. So I had to move to Middlesex, but that's just the formal, practical aspect of it. There were other aspects. For me, it was a rite of passage because during that time that I was doing my PhD, I was also working on film, which was part of my PhD. It was part of the practice, artistic side of my PhD. And my film was about a young woman's rite of passage. And I will not talk about it now, but it was such an important part of my development and evolution as the human being, as a person. A week ago, I just finished a book based on this film, and it's not a fiction book, and it's very much book for makers, for people who make films or make dance or make art. I never planned to do a PhD. I wasn't planning an academic career at all. I wanted to be an artist and not have anything to do with academia. But the reason why I decided to pursue an academic career is, again, another story. My PhD was about a new art form. It was a new art form then, because the term screen dance didn't exist when I was making a screen dance. But again, it was based on ideas and groundbreaking films of a woman that influenced my life in ways which are truly magical. And her name is Deren, and she's someone I'm still writing a monograph on. Eventually did a PhD because I discovered her work by chance. That moment of seeing one of her films for me was one of the most magical and transformative moments of my life. And it definitely changed everything for me and put me on a very specific path and rite of passage. I guess we should continue because there is so much to share, and this is just a fragment out of many, many fragments that we're trying to put together. I call it The Quest for Wholeness, and there is actually a film which I didn't release yet, which I've been working on for a long time, and it's called The Quest for Wholeness, and it's about putting those fragments together into wholeness. And I think it's a lifetime project, but it's part of the quest. It's part of the quest, which is obviously essentially personal and transpersonal, inner and outer.
Can I comment on?
Yes,
I just want to emphasize that how beautiful your story, all our stories are connecting, and your fascination with women artists and deep connections and dialogue with them through kind of past years, in past generations, and your attraction to ritual and ritual of passage, especially, and the MaryRita's way of working with archetypes and masks and liminal space, other dimensions which influence our life, and my kind of like quest into magical theater. It all brings us, and my fascination with Great Mother and her mysteries, all bring us on the common territory where we finding not only transpersonal dimension for art, but also healing dimension. And what you are saying, that so many women artists have been on this way before us and done so much. And it's like our past is calling to pay attention what was going on. Yeah. So, and I want to thank you for this emphasis, because it's not possible to be in a moment not having past and future at this moment with us. And thank you for the beauty of these memories. And our concentration on ritual, bringing us also on this magical shaman healing territory of being right now in this moment, starting some recovery, some healing process for feminine art, for feminine psyche, for bringing to life the powers of magical powers of divine and feminine. And this is kind of like bringing, becoming a focus somehow of us, three of us starting this conversation. So thank you so much for
Thank you.
This story.
Thank you all. And I think that we can take so many, weave something from these, from our conversation and introductions, because I can see so many themes that can be unpacked into kind of separate discussions.
For sure.
Yeah.
And there was one thing I wanted to add as well is the presence of mystery within each of the sharing of our stories today is this presence of mystery. And it always makes me think of that idea that when we're participating in the mystery or living the mystery, I think it was like a Taoist idea, it takes away the duality and that sense of the good and the bad. But just this moving with the mystery, which is allowing for all of these different parts of us or all of these different expressions to be present. But one thing I was really struck by in your story, Lila, is this journey with this artist, that has transcended just having kind of the knowledge of the artist, but there felt like there was an embodiment and a true embodiment of her story. And that sense of embodying stories is just so powerful. We're going to take these voices, these unheard voices, or these voices that weren't heard at the time, and embody them through stories. And then it really links to what you were saying, Inna, about being, at the core a storyteller. At the core, there's the story, and this conscious storytelling for me is what I'm feeling very present today. Is conscious storytelling that is activating something, or even by just us being here in this dimension today with the mystery and sharing these stories, something has changed, something has shifted, and it'll be interesting to see how that now plays out.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. Yeah,
that's the mystery.
The mystery.
Yeah. Like bringing this story forward, we are affecting the reality, our world, and bringing this energy into the field. We're activating these interests, and I believe that more people we will invite to dialogue, the wider our community will grow, the more powerful this energy of change, of awakening of this power in us will happen. Yes, so that will be massive.
Yes. So here's to embarking on a fascinating journey into the unknown. We have so much to share, discuss, and explore across a wide range of ideas, creativity, and transpersonal themes. So subscribe and stay in touch.
Subscribe to the Transpersonal Arts Podcast.